Congresswoman Emily Randall of Washington State did what far too few in Congress are willing to do. In a powerful exchange with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison, Randall laid bare the double standard at the heart of this administration's so-called war on fraud. While the GOP points fingers at minority communities in blue states, their own backyard Mississippi, Brett Favre, $77 million in stolen welfare funds, somehow escapes scrutiny. What unfolded in that hearing room is something every American needs to hear.
Ms. Randall from Washington State.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Governor Walz, Attorney General Ellison, and Reverend Tolgard, for being here to shed light on the impacts of the Trump administration's harmful actions in Minnesota, and frankly, to be pulled into some really ridiculous question lines. The escalation in attacks from this administration on social services programs in democratically led states like Minnesota, on the heels of the big ugly law's billions of dollars of Medicaid cuts last summer, is clearly devastating our communities. Do I believe Congress has a responsibility to reduce opportunities for misuse and fraud where we have seen evidence that it exists? Sure. That's why I introduced the Federal Program Integrity and Fraud Prevention Act, a bipartisan bill that would prevent individuals who have been convicted of fraud from applying for federal contracts. Mr. Chairman, if you are serious about addressing fraud, I'd love to see this committee hold a hearing on my bill, which was developed based on feedback from nonpartisan inspectors general, whose entire job is overseeing the appropriate administration of government programs. And let me remind my friends on the other side about Mississippi, a state with Republican leadership where over $77 million in temporary assistance for needy families funds were misused. One of the perpetrators of that fraud, former NFL quarterback Brett Favre, who received $1.1 million from the government for speeches he never made. Congressional Republicans' response was to invite Favre to come testify before the Ways and Means Committee about how we should strengthen oversight of federal welfare programs. Because I'm sure he had some good advice about that. Meanwhile, my Republican colleagues are villainizing entire minority populations because of the actions of a few. We have a word for that. I also have a lot of Republican colleagues here who talk about being fiscally responsible and reining in federal spending. Again, I also believe we should be fiscally responsible, but to me, responsible governing means that we invest in transformative universal health care that saves us money in the long term, childcare policies that give the budget back $7 on the dollar spent in long-term costs for the children who benefit. Policies that will actually save our country money in the long run and contribute to strong society and strong economy. Not slashing social services, not defunding hospitals, not eliminating childcare programs. Governor Walz, why do you think the Trump administration is so obsessed with fraud in Minnesota when its own agencies have found other states with even worse problems?
Well, it's a question we're all asking, Congresswoman, and I'd like to say, and thank you for this, I just want to make sure I go on record, Chairman Comer, in condemning the slurs towards my Somali community that the gentlewoman from South Carolina made. Thank you. Look, Congress, I don't know. I think it's been pretty clear the president does not like me personally. I think he continues to tell lies about our electoral system, claiming that he's won all 3 times when he lost all 3 times. I think he has people around him who were trying to find quotas around immigration, and they saw a perfect storm, if you will, that included some Somali folks and a whole lot. You know, if we're going to condemn folks, there's no Somali folks in the Epstein files, things like that, we know. But I don't know. It's an obsession, and I come back to it again. I think it's because we are so ideologically opposed to making children go hungry, people go unhoused. We invest in education, we invest in research, and we believe everybody has a place. And so I think it's just personal about how we do business.
Thank you so much. I could not agree more. There are also reports that as many as 50 prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office for Minnesota have quit in the last 12 months. They used to have 70 prosecutors. Now some reports say they have as few as 17. Many of those who left include the very same prosecutors who were prosecuting defeating our future's fraudsters. How has this flight impacted your efforts to fight fraud in Minnesota?
Well, it's made it very difficult. And I think for all of my friends on the Republican side, we welcomed the Republican folks, the attorneys over at the U.S. Attorney's Office who were good at helping us as partners. We turned this over to them. They prosecute, they put people in jail. They're not there now. There's nobody doing this. And I will remind this committee, the U.S. attorney was in front of a federal judge yesterday being threatened with jail because of what's going on in that office. And from my perspective, who's prosecuting trafficking, drugs, murder, and fraud? And so we want them. If you could do anything, Chairman, call the president and tell him to put some U.S. attorneys over there to prosecute fraud. I'll sign on with you.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Congresswoman Emily Randall did not mince words. She came prepared with facts, with legislation, and with a question that no one on the Republican side of the aisle has been able to answer convincingly. Why Minnesota? Why now? And why are we ignoring the fraud that festers in states where the GOP holds every lever of power? $77 million stolen from some of the poorest families in the poorest state in the union. And the Republican response? They invited one of the people who benefited from that theft, a retired quarterback, to advise Congress on how to fix it. And then there's Governor Walz, who made a point that should alarm every American, regardless of party. The federal prosecutors who were doing the actual work of fighting fraud in Minnesota, the ones who secured convictions, who put people behind bars in the Feeding Our Futures case, are gone, 50 of them. The office that once had 70 prosecutors now operates with fewer than 20. The very infrastructure of accountability has been gutted not by Democrats, not by progressives, but by an administration that claims to be tough on crime. This is not about fraud prevention. If it were, the administration would be staffing U.S. attorney offices, not hollowing them out. If it were about fiscal responsibility, Republicans would not have passed a bill that adds trillions to the national debt while slashing Medicaid. This is about punishment. It is about making an example of blue states, of immigrant communities, of anyone who represents the kind of America that this president finds politically inconvenient. Governor Walz said something today that deserves to echo far beyond that hearing room. We are so ideologically opposed to making children go hungry, people go unhoused. We invest in education, we invest in research, and we believe everybody has a place. That is not a radical statement. That is the foundational promise of this country. And the fact that it is now treated as a provocation tells you everything you need to know about where the Republican Party stands in this moment.